there is a technique which is through your, just, if there is pain here, what do? You actually focus on that part which is giving you pain. And when you begin to do that, when you pay attention to that part and just deeply, let's say, even just heal or think about, just let it all that pain at a very deep level will begin to dissipate. It's your own thought process and just looking at, that's why they do in this Reiki, they do, or even in this Shavasana, they ask you to observe your body at a very deep level. And at that deep level, when you just observe, a lot of repairing takes place. In deep sleep, what happens? A lot of repairing takes place because you find yourself not connected. But here, it is not that the mind is awake and at the same time at a very deep state. And with that deep state, if you are aware of different parts of your body, they automatically do a lot of repair work. So therefore, this is one form of relaxation. That is the first step. The second step of meditation is watching your breathing. Okay. Now, there is a connection between your breath and your mental activity. So even if you go to, let's say, in the US and on this stress reduction seminar, one of the things they ask you to do is to breathe and watch your breathing. The minute you watch your breathing, it actually has immediate effect on your mind. It calms your mind. Okay? So that's a second step of Vedanta meditation, which is quieting the mind. After having done that, there is a third step, which is what we call japa meditation. Okay? Now, in this japa meditation, you select any chant, whatever you like, in whichever religion, whatever you are used to. But let's say you take one chant, let's say Om Namah Shivaya. Now, you tell yourself that you are going to repeat this chant for 10 minutes. Okay? So now, that's okay. What will happen? You will chant Om Namah Shivaya, Om Namah Shivaya, Om Namah Shivaya, and then the mind goes somewhere else. Said, oh, this Babulnath temple I haven't been to. Oh yeah, but it's so crowded. And I really. And then, oh yeah, but that concert that I saw about that singer was singing a Shiva song. And oh yeah, so now next time I want to go to Mount Kailash. So that means you will start what? Just thinking about something else. In your day-to-day activities, you have no job for your mind. So therefore, when the mind goes from one topic to the other, you don't you just let it go because that is how the mind is. Okay? And in fact, the fact that mind moves is not a problem. Don't make it into a problem. Imagine that if my mind is stuck with one sentence, it will not be able to produce the next sentence. In order for me to produce second sentence, my mind has to move. The nature of mind is to move. Nobody can actually, it's not healthy to stop the mind from moving. Imagine if I'm looking at the tree and my thought will get stuck at the tree. Next minute, I will not be able to look at any other object because my mind is stuck. Moving mind is not a problem. Then what is the problem? The problem is, in that moving mind, I want the mind to do one thing, it ends up doing something else. So that means there is distraction. So I want the mind to move, right? It's one thought, one chant, Om Namah Shivaya, next chant, Om Namah Shivaya. Mind is moving, okay? But the mind is not moving in the way that I want it to move. I want it to say Om Namah Shivaya and it's ending up thinking about something else. So So that means that gives us an insight about our relationship with the mind. That even for 10 minutes in a day, you can't get it to do what you want it to do. So that means we are not managing the mind is managing us. It's taking us for a ride. So now, how do you do that? Now, how do you become the person who has that mind is an instrument with you rather than it takes you for a ride? So there is this whole thing of you bring back, because you've given yourself a task of chanting for 10 minutes. So what do? When it starts thinking about something else, what do? You gently bring it back. Gently bring it back by saying, now you can think about Mount Kailash, you can think about anything that you want to, but not for these next 10 minutes. For next 10 minutes, you just have to do Om Namah Shivaya. So every time you bring it back, then what happens over a period of time? Before, what would happen? How many times the mind would just go off? Many, many times. As you begin to practice meditation, it will do what? It will be less and less distracted. Now this kind of a mind which is less distracted and is able to be with a given thing for a length of time, how does it help you even outside meditation? What does it do?
Focus.
Focus. Concentration. Okay? When you are doing something, you are doing that thing. Okay? And it can help you in your studies, it can help you in your work. I mean, it's amazing. I mean, that non-distracted, or even in your thought processes. Okay? When somebody is making decision, the person is bringing so many different factors, some of which are totally unrelated to this decision making of what needs to be done now. Okay. So that focus gives us, now what am I trying to solve first, and what are the relevant factors, and within those relevant factors, what is within my sphere of influence and what is not within my sphere of influence. Even if you begin to have certain amount of focus like that, I'll tell you, your decision making itself will become so much easier. Because all the information is all jumbled up with no clarity. And from there we create feeling of vulnerability. Because yes, there are certain variables over you have no control, it's true. But we put it all together. But there are certain variables over which you do have control. And we have no clarity. So therefore, that focus also helps us to sort out things. Then, the next benefit of this mantra meditation is that when you there is this tendency of the mind to build up, okay, and that tendency of the mind to build up itself is something which is not bad. Please understand that. Just as the mind, the nature of mind is to move, and it has to move for you to accomplish many different things, itself is not bad, but it only becomes what kind of an obstacle when you don't know how to manage that moving, right? Similarly, building up is something which is necessary. You go to class 1, you study a little bit of math. In class 2, what do? You build up on the knowledge that you have already gained. Every knowledge that you have gained is what? A build-up on something. And so therefore, the mind has to what? Remember each part and has to build up on the parts that one knows and make it finer and finer and finer. But now this very capacity, which actually is a blessing, becomes a problem if you don't use it properly. So that story that I told you, this Ardho Papad, I told you this story, right? So what happens? That this one little fact of this person was not got serve this papad full. And what happened? He made into some huge story and suffered for no reason for 5 years. So this Rajiv is looking at me because I think you were not there in the last class. So I told a story about Kaldo Papad.
I'm a Sindhi, I'm very attached to papads.
Oh yeah. So therefore, that build up, what it creates a lot of suffering. We build stories and we get totally identified with those stories, and we are unable to differentiate between the facts and our own traditions. So how do you check the tendency of the mind to build the stories? By this amazing technique of what this in the chant. What is the first chant? Om Namah Shivaya. What is the second chant? Om Namah Shivaya. What is the third chant? Om Namah Shivaya. It curbs the tendency of mind to what? Build. Otherwise our mind works with what? Association, and you build on Shiva, then you bring to some, come to some temple, then you come to Mount Kailash, and it all just builds a story through association. Sometimes you deliberately use that capacity to build, it is fine, but right? So that tendency to build has to be curbed. So that is by repeating the same chant. That is the second thing it does. The third thing it does, in between two chants, what is there?
Gap.
There is a gap. And what is that gap? Silence. Okay. Now this silence is something which is between two thoughts. There is always a silence. You can't have two thoughts without that little gap. But that gap is so small that what happens? We don't notice it. When we don't notice it, what happens? We miss out on a very important fact, which is our relationship with the thoughts. For us, whatever is the thought becomes what? The nature of life. Your whole thought life becomes what? It gets loaded onto the nature of your life. By understanding the fact that between the two thoughts there is silence, and who am I? Am I silence? Am I thought? Or am I observer of both?
Observer.
You are the observer of both. Okay? So therefore, neither you are silence. The minute you begin to say, I am silence, then thought will seem like what? A distraction. Thought is not a distraction. Thought is something which is given to you through this mind, which is capable of thinking. You can accomplish so many things. Don't think of it as a distraction, but just understand your relationship with the thought and silence. You are the observer who observes thoughts and silence. This is a fact.
I heard a saying that between the silence between
the two thoughts
is where all creation is born. Like for silence between the two notes of the music is the music.
So that means to have that inner leisure. See, the thing is that when we are so cluttered in our thinking and we are not able to spend some quiet moments, right? Then it curbs our creativity. That is true. Okay? But at the same time, it doesn't. From that silence comes creativity, right? So that creativity is with reference to thought. So therefore, thought is not a distraction. It gives you that center point which you are not coming in touch with, right? From there comes all the creativity. But what's your relationship with the silence? It's not you. It is something which is the invariable presence. When there is thought, are you there or not? To know its presence. Are you there or not? You are there. When the thought is not there, which is what we call silence, are you there or not? You are very much there. So therefore, the Upanishads say, who are you? You are Pratibodha Vidita Mata. You are that invariable presence which is free from what? Any thought and free from any silence. Silence and thoughts are variable states. They come and they go. You are what? The observer, Sakshi. And that Sakshi is already free from what? The observer is free from what is observed. Today I observe table, next day I will observe tree, the third day I will observe some garbage. Is the observer ever affected by what is the nature of the object of observation? Is it?
Should not be.
It never is. Not should not be, it never is. The observer doesn't become table. The observer doesn't become the tree.
But the observer gets affected, no, by what it observes.
So that means that what gets affected is there are certain mental activities which are created, right? And there is this whole mechanism, all these different activities happen at the level of mind. So when you say the observer gets affected, you are still talking about the mind, right? But that's the thing. We have defined ourselves just as good as the mind, but there is this the presence of the observer which is independent of the mind we miss. And that creates all the problems. That observer which is observing different changing thoughts of the mind is essentially a free reality. Achyutaya Namah. It is never affected. But what happens is, because of our lack of understanding, we have taken what the mind as the observer. But actually there is an observer which is more fundamental than the mind that we have missed out. Okay? So this is why this observer that we say is affected is this observer which is what we call ahankara. As I explained to you that there are four modes of thinking. One is what? Manas, which is emotion. The second is buddhi, your cognitive capacity. The third is what? The memory. And the fourth is what? That I sense, which is a thought, right? Which gets connected to your emotions, it gets connected to your what? The cognitive capacity, it gets connected to your memories, and it creates an entity, and we think that this entity is the observer, and it constantly keeps getting affected. But these are all four different facets of the mind, and who are you? You are Chit. That is the whole thing of Vedanta. That Chit is something which is there, but we miss it. We are not producing Chit. It is there, but it is always missed in our awareness, in our understanding. So it's making us recognize that reality which is there, which we always miss. Okay? So now, in meditation, otherwise what happens is that in the class, when I talk about this reality which is always present, and you're not used to thinking about things like that, it seems like an abstract thing. But in meditation, when you are quiet and through this process of chanting, if I make you understand the relationship that there is this space which is silence, and where are you? Are you in silence, or you are in thought, or you are in both? Right? When the silence comes, are you aware of the presence of silence or not? Yes, right? When that silence goes and another thought comes, are you there to know its presence or not? Yes. When that thought goes and another thought comes, are you there or not? You're always there, but that presence is always missed in your understanding. Okay? So therefore, meditation gives you that mental space. And that mental space is so necessary to live your life. You know, your relationship with the mind has to be understood. What is the nature? What is your relation? The whole problem is everybody who gives you whatever, they don't make you see the real distance between the mind and mind. Mind is an instrument. The mind is capable of doing many things. Emotions are not a problem, right? Cognitive capacity is not a problem. Your memory, not a problem. Your sense of I, which connects it all, is not a problem. What is the problem? What is an instrument? You take it to be I. That is the problem. The characteristics of the instrument are taken to be the characteristics of I, and then therefore all the limitations, which are also, like every instrument has some limitations. The limitations of that instrument are also what? Imputed on I, and then you create distortions. This is the problem. Where is the music? It's like our teacher used to say that when an actor goes and acts in a play, what is the relationship between the role and the actor? Are the two one? They are not one. Why not one?
You don't really become the king, or you don't become the devil.
Excellent.
You remain what you are. You are
Absolutely. So that means that when you are playing a role of a beggar, you don't become really the beggar. Okay? So that means there is a real distance between what the actor and the role that the actor plays. Now imagine an actor starts thinking that I am the beggar. What will happen? The actor will go to mental institute. Because that real distance, it's a real distance. It's not an advice. Please understand, Vedanta doesn't give you an advice. It makes you see a reality. There is a real distance between the mind and I. Antakarana is the mind and its four faculties. What is the nature of I? Satyam, Jnanam, Anantam, Brahma. The whole problem we have is what? The mix-up. Something which is an instrument is taken, and the limitation, it's a limited instrument. But it's an amazing instrument. We have lost that distance between I and the mind. And through that, because any instrument is limited, and so therefore we have started defining ourselves as that limited instrument. And when that happens, what? Your eye gets loaded with all kinds of limitations. And that means your vision of the world is all distorted. It is like an actor taking oneself to be the beggar. Or a king, let's say, because the if your quality of, but it's actually free from both. So in meditation, you begin to discover this presence, chit, which you always miss otherwise. The minute you begin to discover the presence of chit, what happens is you don't need to deny the mind, you don't need to deny anything. Imagine that the actor knows that this beggar is only one role that I am playing. Does it mean that the person will be indifferent to the role? No. Will play it so well and will make you cry.
So it's like in our lives, how many roles we play,
Absolutely.
like the mother, sister,
Yes,
daughter, how we
absolutely.
change from one role to the other without.
Being affected.
effortlessly. Like if the mother comes, you know how to behave.
Absolutely. So that means, who are you?
Am I a mother?
You are free from all. Right? Because with reference to one person, with reference to your child, you are playing role of your mother, of his or her mother. Okay? With reference to your own parents, you are playing role of a child. With reference to your spouse, you are playing role, and with reference to your friends, with reference to your colleagues, you are playing different roles. But if you get lost in that one given role, what will happen? Everything, the whole objectivity goes. So let's say this is what happens most of the time, because in one role there may be a challenge. Okay? Now when we lose that perspective between the essential difference between me and the role, what will happen? That problem of that role will become what? Your own problem, and then it will occupy 95% of your mental time. Even in your own definition, you will not say, I am much more than any role that I play. In one of the roles, I have this given problem. That means you are not denying the problem, but you are giving it a proper perspective. When that is what? Taken as the problem, and your mind keeps what?
Commit suicide.
Yeah. Then what happens? That whatever that problem is, let's say you have a problem at work with your boss, you come home and you shout, at somebody else. What does it mean?
That one role is making
That one role is, because of that lack of knowledge, that role is ruling your life. The problem in that role is ruling your life and is getting transferred in what? All the other roles. And not only that, the distinction between you and the role is also messed up. So much non-clarity we have with reference to our lives. So meditation gives you that space without denying, right? And giving it the right place. When you give it the right place, your capacity to solve it also becomes much more. You're not overwhelmed because you know this is you localize it. Just give it the right place. Okay? So therefore, that gives you what we call the inner leisure. Inner leisure is coming from understanding of the fact that I am always free. And this is the only, Vedanta is the only place which will start by making you understand the fact that, hey, you're already free from what? All the limitations. Every other discipline will what? You are limited, and let me show you some fix. It is something which is doing this invaluable service of making you see this fact about yourself, which is so much more than what you ever imagined. So therefore, this is meditation is a practice. You don't need, it's not like you have to, divinity is all that is here. All that is here is Ishvara. And this awareness happens to be even the truth of Ishvara. Okay. So therefore, Vedanta just makes you, it's not, meditation is not any particular type of experience. It is not even, because there is no real separation between you and divine. There is no real separation. The separation is only from what? Your ignorance. So this whole meditation practice, according to Vedanta, is what? Making you what? Be totally alive to your own reality. And that is, in that understanding of the reality, when you are transacting with the world, you will have, the challenges will remain. Okay? The challenges will not go away in anybody's life. What changes is what?
Attitude towards
The
that.
way you address, the way you look, the way you define yourself with reference to those challenges. It undergoes a huge, major scale. It's a shift. And it's a shift based on reality. It's not a make-believe shift. Okay? And meditation helps that. So meditation helps you. Half an hour of meditation every day with this Vedanta style. And then there are many different steps. Those other steps I will talk about at some other time. Because here right now it is just short chunks, so I don't want to get into other steps of meditation. But keep your mind and use it. Then the next one is, yes.
Vedanta is the only one
Huh.
that gives you this clarity.
Huh.
So in Western philosophy,
Yes.
in Latin,
Yes.
there is a saying which is cogito ergo sum.
Huh.
I think, therefore I am.
Huh.
So in other Indian philosophies also, is that the same thing, or is Vedanta the only one that differentiates?
Yeah. So that's a good question, because there is a very famous that I think, therefore I am. So that
That means
means
you're connecting yourself to the mind.
you're giving, exactly. You're giving.
Whilst we say that we are not the mind,
We
we
are
are not the body, we are not the intellect.
Exactly, absolutely. So that means now in other schools of thought, see when you study Indian spiritual heritage, right? Nowadays you have people talking about all kinds of things, and people become gurus and people have their own ideas. But I'm talking about the traditional. You go to Oxford, you go to Cambridge, you go to Harvard, and you want to study Indian philosophy, right? Spiritual heritage. You will study 6 different schools. You will study Vaisheshika, Nyayika, you will study Sankhya, you will study Yoga, and Purva Mimamsa and Uttara Mimamsa. These are the traditional schools of thought. Okay? Now, in all of these, Atma, I, is taken to be more than the mind, in all of them. Okay? But what if it is more than mind, what it is, they all 6, they differ.
Sorry?
They differ in what that I is. Right? So Vedanta talks about, for all of them, Atma, I, is more than the body mind. But then, you can't just say it is more than body mind, what it is. So what it is, there are distinctions. So therefore, we study those schools of thought to then ascertain what is then the real nature of mind. So this is what involved. This is an involved study of nature of I. So initially, when we study Vedanta Shastra, we make you see what we are studying right now is Advaita Vedanta. In that category, what we are studying is Advaita Vedanta. Advaita Vedanta means non-duality. Okay. Now,
Means what? No.
non-duality. Dvaita means duality, and Advaita means non-duality. Then there are other schools which talk about Dvaita. Okay. Now I'll just give you a little bit of understanding so that you know what you're doing. Okay. Now Dvaita school, for example, Sankhya is a Dvaita school. What is a Dvaita school? Dvaita school is where you say there is essential difference between Jiva, Jagat and Ishvara. Jiva is what? The individual. Jagat is what? The universe. And Ishvara is the cause of the universe. Okay. Advaita, what does it say?
All is one.
All is one. All these are different standpoints, right? And what is the reality is that one.
How does that matter?
It matters because you can't really, see, it matters because if there is a reality about you, and if you don't capture it accurately, then what your whole basis of transaction with the world is based on your self-image, which itself is a wrong self-image. The starting point of all your transaction is wrong. So that because in Dvaita what happens, just I'll tell you how that, so when they also do the same analysis, you're not the body, you're not the mind, then who are you, this awareness, okay? But according to them, your awareness is different from mine and my awareness is different from yours. So there, as Tushar was saying, there are what? Pockets of awareness.
7 billion.
7 billion,
18 billion.
yeah, 18 billion awarenesses. So that means you have understood that I am independent of the body and mind, but then what is your understanding? That essentially you and me are different, because my awareness is distinct from yours. That's why we engage into discussion with them and we show them there is a logical flaw. Because reality means you have to understand that reality accurately. If all your vision of who you are, the starting point is wrong, then everything, every subsequent thing will end up being wrong. So you can't afford to have a wrong, and you can't afford to not understand the world accurately. Because the fact is, the world is mithya, and you think it to be absolutely real. You're starting at a wrong point. And then with that wrong understanding, what it multiplies and it becomes more and more complex, and you just enter. So that's why the clarity about what is very essential. But it has to work down, and it has to really, the clarity with reference to not only that big picture, but it then has to percolate everywhere, and you have to understand everything and put it in its place. So this Shaucham is something which is the commitment to truth, the commitment to clarity, the commitment to, you can't, when you go to a psychologist and they will say, yeah, but so what if I have a mix-up? The very mix-up is the problem. And if you want to get better, you can't but undo that mix-up. You can't say within this mix-up I want to keep that mix-up and you solve the problem. There is no solution.
So if you really understood the moti ki mala, that everyone is a moti and that's the string, and so then it's easier to come back to understanding who we are. And
see, there are so many different aspects of Vedanta that you have to understand accurately. Because now you have to also, there is one reality that you have understood, that there is one string, which is that intelligence which puts together all the different beings, right? Now you also understood that I am that awareness. So then you also then need to reconcile both, and you have to ask, so then what's my relationship with that intelligence? See, the whole picture, otherwise what happens is, we have parts of the picture, but it hasn't created a coherent vision of reality. All these different parts of the teaching have to what? Assimilate together and then make a coherent picture of reality. And that reality first has to be understood, and then it has to percolate in what your transaction with the world. So that takes time. Okay? The whole thing is that each part is understood, but how that part connects to the other part is not very clear. That's why one has to listen to Vedanta Shastra to really understand what is being said. Okay? So to answer your question, all these different schools of thought, they think about Atma as being independent of the body and mind, but that doesn't do the job. Because then you still have to ask that question, then what is that Atma which is independent of the body? Because there are so many different contentions, and which contention is right? So that's why it's an involved understanding. Now, Shaucha and
There are
Sthairya.
six different views.
There are 6 different views within Indian philosophy. So when you say you are a Hindu, it doesn't mean that you are all Advaitians, not at all. So, and then there have been debates.
So what are those different views? We'll talk some other.
Yeah, I did it during this Brahma Sutra. So I did that in detail because in Brahma Sutra, which is the last text we study, we do all these different views. And we enter into a dialogue. And yeah.
So what is the title of today's discussion? If you have it, searching it on the live stream.
Huh?
What is the title?
Sure.
We'll find it on the.
No, you will just have the date and the time. This is the Gateway of India class.
It's under Gateway of India class.
So, Sthiryam. Sthiryam is perseverance, right? So that means, now what is the time? It's way past.
5 minutes.
Yeah, I have
In 10 minutes.
I'll leave 5 minutes.
I have to also leave at 10:50.
10:15. So
Yeah,
can
let's
we
go
do
ahead.
5 more? 5 minutes, 10:15. Okay. Sthiryam is perseverance. So anything, any discipline that you study, you think that in everything that you want to master, how long do you spend? Years. Where you want
They
to
say
become
10,000
this
hours.
Yeah, 10,000 hours.
10,000 hours, right? So that means
All those hours
anything.
you become good, 10,000 hours you can be an orchestra player.
Yeah,
Or any skill.
absolutely. So therefore, same thing with reference to Vedanta. Okay? You can't say, huh? Yeah, sthirta. Sthirta means that you need to persevere. What happens is, you study for 5 days, then you say, chalo, I know I'm not the body and I know that. So there is a very superficial way of knowing things. And there is no proper understanding, but you somehow say, I know it. Okay? And therefore, you miss it. Okay? So therefore, a lot of people say, so now, okay, you will finish Bhagavad-Gita and then you will have to study about, let's say, some Upanishad. What is the subject matter of the Upanishad? Exactly the same as Bhagavad-Gita. What is the subject matter? Who are you? What is the nature of the universe? What is the nature of the cause of the universe? How do you understand this bigger picture differently and how that you live your life differently? The whole thing is only about that. So whether you study Taittiriya Upanishad or you study Chandogya Upanishad or you study Mandukya Upanishad, it's ultimately the same. So then you say, yeah, but it's all repetition. Yeah, it is repetition. But it takes years. That repetition is not redundant. Because that repetition, it takes years for a human mind. Because our orientation with which that we have been living our life is what? I'm a limited individual. Everybody is separate from me. I am living in this huge universe where so many, which is separate from me and so many things I can't control. And I feel helpless. And I feel small. Inadequate. There is a lack. And no matter what I do, I can't get rid of it. That lack keeps on getting reinforced. And what is the vision of Vedanta? You are the whole. You are complete. You lack nothing. So now 1 hour of Vedanta which tells you, you lack nothing. And all the stories that you have created for not only this lifetime, but lifetimes before, is what reinforcing and reinforcing and reinforcing your individuality. What is going to have more strength? 1 hour of Vedanta or your orientation?
1 hour.
Should be.
You are very involved. You're still getting there.
So that is an ideal case, right? That 1 hour of Vedanta does such a job that it actually takes over. And that's the whole idea. That as you do 1 hour of Vedanta and 1 hour of Vedanta and 1 hour of Vedanta, over a period of time, what will happen is Vedanta will prevail over your past patterns. Okay? And then that becomes the reality from where you operate. and that takes time. Okay, so therefore that abhyasa, that repetition is something in the Shastra itself they say abhyasa is necessary. Rethink about the whole world and your position in it in a totally different manner. It's a paradigm shift. And keep on reinforcing that with all these different standpoints and strengthen it to see for yourself that how this vision of Shastra cannot be contradicted. No reason in this world can contradict what it says. So that means all our point of views are all partial or inadequate, not subject from with error. And you have to keep undoing it. So that's why it takes time. And even to get the vision accurately itself takes a long time, let alone to implement that vision. Because we've understood the paths, but we've not really given enough thought to how these different paths come together to produce one vision. What is the relationship of each one with the other? And that begins, that clarity begins to emerge more and more you listen to this Shastra. Okay? So that is Sthairya. Sthairya means staying with the person. Sthirasya bhava, Sthairya. Staying there. Okay? So that, I'll just finish with the prayer. So, that is the next value. The last one, Atma Vinigraha, we'll see next time.
Which one is that?
Atma Vinigraha.
What is that?
Self-discipline.
Yeah. It means that certain amount of mastery over yourself. So,
I need to attend.
Om Purnamadav Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnamevavashishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti.